The first time I saw my name next to the word boyfriend, I thought someone had made a mistake. The second time I saw it, I realized the mistake was mine. I had spent almost an entire year assuming I understood Hannah Whitmore. I didn't. Evan, if you're here to tell me the printer is broken again, I already know. I looked up from the office doorway. Hannah Whitmore was sitting behind the nurse's desk with an ice pack pressed against her wrist. That alone was unusual. Hannah was the kind of person who made broken things look like they had embarrassed themselves for failing. The student council president. The captain of the school's academic decathlon team. The girl teachers trusted with important decisions because she never panicked. She wasn't cold because she disliked people. She was careful because she hated depending on them. At least, that was what everyone said. And honestly, it wasn't completely wrong. No printer problem, I said. Then why are you here? I held up the folder in my hand. The volunteer coordinator asked me to bring the medical permission forms from the community service club. Hannah looked at the folder, then at me. You came all the way here just for paperwork? Yes. You could have left it at the front office. Yes. Then why didn't you? I shrugged. Because the nurse's office was closer. For some reason, that answer made her smile slightly. It was small. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. That was the strange thing about Hannah. Everyone noticed the obvious parts. The perfect grades. The speeches. The way people listened when she entered a room. Almost nobody noticed the smaller things. Like how she always carried extra pens because someone always forgot theirs. How she stayed after meetings to stack chairs. How she knew which freshman was struggling before anyone else did. I wasn't her friend exactly. Not officially. We just kept ending up in the same places. The volunteer club. Student council events. School projects. She was usually the person making the plan. I was usually the person fixing the parts of the plan that reality destroyed. It worked. Somehow. I placed the folder on the desk. Are you okay? Hannah glanced at her wrist. I'm fine. That doesn't answer the question. It does. No, it answers a different question. She looked at me. What question? Are you injured badly enough to need help? A pause. Then she looked away. I hate that you do that. Do what? Ask follow-up questions. I smiled. That sounds like a compliment. It isn't. It usually is when people say it like that. Before she could respond, the school nurse returned from another room. Sorry, Hannah. I just need you to complete this emergency contact update before you leave. Hannah nodded. Sure. The nurse placed a clipboard on the desk. I stepped back. Should I go? No. The answer came too quickly. I looked at her. She seemed to realize it too. I mean, you don't have to. Okay. I stayed. Hannah picked up the form. I wasn't trying to look. I really wasn't. But the clipboard was turned slightly toward me. And one section caught my attention. Emergency contact information. Relationship. Name. Phone number. The first line was for family. The second line was for another contact. Then I saw it. Relationship. Boyfriend. Name. Evan Carter. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I looked at the form, then at Hannah, then back at the form. Hannah. She froze. What? I pointed. Is there a reason my name is there? Her expression changed. Not panic. Not embarrassment. Something closer to realization. Like she knew this moment would eventually happen. The nurse suddenly walked back in. Oh, you finished already? Hannah immediately covered the form. Yes. The nurse smiled. Great. Remember, emergency contacts should be people who can actually reach you quickly. I know. The nurse left. The room became quiet. I looked at Hannah. Okay. She waited. Okay? Yes. That's your response? I'm deciding how to ask this without sounding completely confused. You are already confused. True. I pointed at the form. You put me down as your boyfriend. Yes. I waited for the explanation. None came. Hannah. Yes? Why? She looked at me. And for once, the girl who always had an answer didn't immediately give one. I was going to tell you. When? She thought. Soon. That is not a time. I know. I laughed because I genuinely didn't know what else to do. You understand why this is surprising, right? Yes. You understand we're not dating? Yes. And you understand most people don't write someone's name as their boyfriend before telling them? Yes. She nodded. I know. That was somehow the most confusing part. She knew. She wasn't making a mistake. Hannah, why would you do this? She looked down at the form. then back at me. Because when I had to choose someone I trusted, she stopped. I waited. It was you. That answer should have made things clearer. It didn't, because trust and boyfriend were not the same thing. At least, they weren't supposed to be. Hannah. Yes? Did you accidentally choose the wrong box? For the first time all afternoon, she looked genuinely offended. No. Okay. Evan. Yeah? She stepped closer. I did not accidentally write your name. Before I could ask another question, she leaned forward and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. No audience. No music. No perfect movie moment. Just Hannah Whitmore, the girl who measured every decision carefully, doing something completely unexpected. Then she stepped back. My mind went completely blank. She looked at me calmly. Almost too calmly. You were going to ask more questions. I stared. Yes. I know. So you kissed me to stop me from asking? No. Then why? Her expression softened. Because I thought if I explained first, you would only think about the reasons. I waited. And? I wanted you to know the answer. Before I could respond, the school bell rang. Students started moving through the hallway outside. Reality returned. Hannah picked up her bag. I'll explain everything. When? She looked at me. After you decide if you're angry. I'm not angry. Good. But I am confused. I expected that. She walked toward the door. Then stopped. Evan. Yeah? She looked back. I didn't put your name there because I wanted to pretend we were together. A pause. I put it there because you're the person I would call when I couldn't handle something alone. Then she left. And I stood in the nurse's office holding a stack of permission forms, trying to understand how the most careful person at Ridgeview High had made the least careful decision I had ever seen. The strange part was, I wasn't angry. I was wondering why. And for the first time, I wanted Hannah Whitmore to give me an answer. Not the perfect answer. The real one. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself that nothing had changed. It didn't work. Every time I saw Hannah in the hallway, I remembered the form. Not the kiss. The form. The kiss was impossible to ignore, but the form was what bothered me. Because a kiss could happen because of a sudden feeling. A mistake. A moment of courage. But writing someone's name as your emergency contact required thought. It meant Hannah had already decided something before I knew there was a decision to make. The next morning, I found her outside the student council office. She was holding a stack of papers and talking to 3 club representatives at once. A normal day for Hannah. She solved problems before most people realized there was one. When the students left, she looked at me. You're early. You noticed? Yes. Of course you did. She tilted her head. You sound disappointed. I'm not. You are. I smiled. You really do notice everything. Hannah looked down at the papers in her hand. You wanted to talk. It wasn't a question. I nodded. About yesterday. I know. You always say that. Because you usually do what I expect. That's slightly insulting. It wasn't meant to be. Somehow that makes it worse. A small smile appeared on her face. Then it disappeared. I owe you an explanation. Yes. She looked toward the empty hallway. Can we walk? I followed her. We ended up near the old science building. It was one of the quieter places on campus. Students rarely came there unless they had class. Hannah. Yes? Why was I your emergency contact? She didn't answer immediately. That was becoming a pattern. Because I knew you would come. I frowned. That's it? No. She looked at me. But it's the first reason. I waited. Last year, during the volunteer event at the community center, I got sick. I remember. I did remember. Hannah had looked completely normal during the event. Then, near the end, she almost collapsed while organizing supplies. I remember everyone telling me to sit down. She said, that sounds reasonable. It was. Then what was the problem? She smiled slightly. I didn't know how to accept it. That surprised me. Because Hannah Whitmore accepting help sounded almost impossible. I thought if I stepped away, everything would fall apart. Did it? No. She looked at me. Because you handled it. I remembered that day. Not the way she did. To me, it was simple. Someone needed help. I helped. You moved the schedule around. She continued. You called the volunteers. You explained everything to the staff. You never made me feel like I had failed. I shrugged. I was just helping. Exactly. She said it quietly. Everyone else treated helping me like they were rescuing me. But you treated it like it was normal. I understood what she meant. But I still had one question. Why does that become boyfriend? Hannah looked away. It doesn't. I waited. That's what I thought too. I looked at her. What? She sighed. The form was for the school leadership retreat. The one next month? Yes. She nodded. They asked every student leader to update emergency contacts. Okay. I filled it out. Okay. Then I realized something. She stopped walking. I didn't have anyone at school I trusted to call. That answer was heavier than I expected. You have friends. I do. You have your team. Yes. Then? Hannah looked at me. They are people I work with. And? I wanted someone who would know what I needed before I explained it. That was the first time I saw something different in Hannah. Not confidence. Not control. Something closer to vulnerability. You could have just written my name. I said. I know. Then why write boyfriend? She looked embarrassed. Actually embarrassed. Because the form required a relationship. I blinked. What? There wasn't a category for. She paused. For someone who matters but doesn't have an official title. I stared. That is the most Hannah explanation possible. She looked slightly annoyed. Is that bad? No. I smiled. It's just very complicated. I know. For a moment, we stood there quietly. Then my phone rang. I checked the screen. It was my older sister, Lily. I answered. Hey. Her voice came through. Did you talk to the community center director? I looked at Hannah. No, not yet. Evan, the youth media project deadline is next week. Right. The project. I had almost forgotten. After school, I worked at a small local media studio. Not because I needed the money. Because I wanted experience. I wanted to study documentary filmmaking after graduation. My goal wasn't to become popular. It wasn't connected to school recognition. I wanted to tell real stories about people who were usually ignored. The community center documentary was my first serious project. And I had promised myself I would finish it. I'll call tonight. I told Lily. Okay. Don't disappear into school problems again. She laughed. I smiled. Yeah. I won't. I ended the call. Hannah was watching me. What? She shook her head. Nothing. That is suspicious. You have a project. Yes. You didn't tell me. I shrugged. You didn't ask. She looked thoughtful. What is it? I explained. The documentary. The interviews. The community center. The deadline. When I finished, Hannah nodded. That matters to you. Yeah. Why? I thought about it. Because a lot of people only notice important people. I stopped. That sounded too similar to something she had said. So I corrected myself. I mean, some stories disappear because nobody thinks they are worth telling. Hannah was quiet. Then she said, I understand. I smiled. You do? Yes. Why? Because I think people often confuse being seen with being understood. That was a very Hannah answer. But this time, I noticed something. She wasn't explaining herself. She was connecting with something I cared about. The next afternoon, Hannah asked if she could help with my documentary. I was surprised. You? Yes. Why? Because you have a deadline. That sounds practical. It is. I smiled. Only practical? She looked away. No. That was the first time I wondered if Hannah was learning something too. Maybe she wasn't the only person being understood. Maybe she was trying to understand me. But before we could start filming, the school announced a major change. The annual leadership retreat had been moved earlier, 2 weeks earlier, and the student council president was required to submit a new emergency management plan. Hannah looked at the announcement, then at me. Problem? I asked. Yes. What kind? She handed me the paper. The retreat requires every student leader to work with a partner. I read the next line. Partner assignments will be based on emergency contact selections. I looked up. Hannah was silent, because now the thing she had written privately was about to become public. The emergency contact forms were supposed to be private. That was the first thing everyone said. And technically, they were right. The school did not release the forms. Nobody printed a list. Nobody announced who wrote whose name. The problem was simpler. The leadership retreat required partners. And when the coordinator matched students based on their emergency contacts, one assignment became impossible to ignore. Hannah Whitmore, Evan Carter. By lunchtime, people knew. Not because someone leaked private information. Because the student leadership office posted the retreat partner list on the public announcement board. The school had not included the relationship details. Only the names. But everyone connected the dots. I walked past the board and immediately heard whispers. Wait, Hannah and Evan? Since when? I thought she didn't work with anyone outside student council. I kept walking. A month ago, I probably would have felt invisible. Now I had the opposite problem. I found Hannah in the library. She was sitting at a table surrounded by retreat materials. She looked up when I approached. You saw the list? Yes. Are you upset? I sat down. I don't know. That answer surprised her. Usually, I had an opinion. I like fixing problems, finding solutions, making things clearer. But this situation was different. Because the problem wasn't the assignment. It was what the assignment made everyone assume. They think we're dating. Hannah closed her notebook. I know. You're okay with that? She thought for a moment. Yes. I looked at her. That was a very fast answer. Because the question is simple. Is it? Yes. She leaned back. People thinking something does not make it true. That was true, but it didn't answer my concern. The issue isn't them. I said. Hannah looked at me. Then what is? I hesitated. I don't want to become a person people only notice because of you. The words came out before I could stop them. Hannah didn't look offended. She looked like she was considering them carefully. That matters to you? Yes. She nodded. Good. I blinked. Good? Yes. Why? Because it means you care about who you are. That was not the answer I expected. I thought she would reassure me. Tell me I was different. Tell me she saw something special. Instead, she said, I would be worried if you wanted to disappear into my life. That stayed with me. Because Hannah had never asked me to become part of her world. She kept trying to make space for mine. The leadership retreat preparation started the next day. It was the biggest student leadership event of the year. Not a competition. Not a performance. A 3-day program where student leaders worked through planning exercises, teamwork challenges, and community projects. Hannah had attended twice before. I had never gone. You'll be fine, she said while we reviewed the schedule. I'm not worried about the retreat. What are you worried about? I looked at the schedule. Being your partner. She looked confused. Why? Because everyone expects you to be perfect. And now they expect me to match that. Hannah was quiet. Then she said something I didn't expect. Evan. Yeah? You don't have to match me. I looked at her. I don't? No. Then why choose me? She didn't answer immediately. Because this time, the question was different. Not why she trusted me. Not why she wrote my name. Why she wanted me beside her when everyone was watching. Finally, she said, because you notice things I miss. I smiled. That's a very polite way of saying I point out your mistakes. It is accurate. Thank you. It was not a compliment. I laughed. The retreat began on Friday. The first challenge was simple. Each partner team had to design a community project proposal. The school wanted ideas that could actually continue after graduation. Most teams immediately chose impressive ideas. Large events. Big campaigns. Things that sounded good. Hannah started writing. Of course she did. I looked at her notes. You're choosing the biggest idea. She looked up. Yes. Why? Because it creates the largest impact. I thought about that. Then I looked around the room. A lot of students were making plans that sounded impressive. But nobody was talking about what they could realistically maintain. What if the biggest idea isn't the best one? Hannah paused. That sounds like something you would say. Is that bad? No. She looked back at the paper. Explain. So I did. I suggested creating a student interview program that connected graduating seniors with younger students who were choosing classes, clubs, and future paths. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't something people would immediately notice. But it could continue. Hannah listened. Then she crossed out her original plan. You're changing it? I asked. Yes. Just like that? She looked at me. You gave me a better reason. That moment was small, but it mattered. Because Hannah was not used to changing direction in front of people. Not because she thought she was better. Because she had built her identity around being prepared. Later that afternoon, another team challenged our idea. One student looked at our proposal. That's nice. The way he said it made it clear he meant something else. But will anyone care? Before Hannah could respond, I did. Yes. Everyone looked at me. I continued. Because people already need it. I explained the students who struggle choosing classes. The younger students who are afraid to ask questions. The people who need information but don't know where to find it. When I finished, the room was quiet. Hannah looked at me. What? Nothing. You have the same look you had yesterday. What look? The one where you notice something and wait for me to figure it out. I smiled. You're learning. That night, after the retreat sessions ended, we sat outside the conference building. The campus was quiet. Hannah. Yes? Can I ask something? Yes. Do you regret writing my name? She didn't hesitate. No. Even after everyone knows? Yes. Why? She looked at the building behind us. Because I made that decision before anyone else had an opinion. That answer mattered. Because Hannah was not someone who ignored people. She listened. She considered. She cared. But she had finally learned that some choices had to belong to the person making them. The next morning, the retreat organizers announced the final activity. Every partner team had to present their project plan to a review panel. The top proposals would receive school funding. I looked at Hannah. She looked at me. Neither of us said anything. But we both understood. The presentation was not the important part. The important part was that for the first time, Hannah was not standing beside someone because she needed help. She was standing beside someone because she wanted that person there. Then the review panel announced one more rule. Only one person from each team could present. The room immediately became competitive. Everyone assumed Hannah would speak. She always did. I looked at her. But Hannah looked at me. And she said, Evan, you should present. I froze. What? She smiled. Your idea. But your name is the reason people are listening. Her expression became serious. And your voice is the reason they should stay. I spent the entire walk back to the dorm room thinking about one thing. Hannah Whitmore had just handed me the microphone. That probably sounds normal. A teammate letting another teammate present. But it wasn't normal for Hannah. Not because she wanted attention. Because she had built her reputation around being responsible. If something mattered, Hannah was there. If something was difficult, Hannah handled it. If something could fail, Hannah prepared for it. And now, in front of everyone, she was choosing not to be the person at the center. You're thinking too much, Hannah said. We were sitting outside the conference room, waiting for the presentation session. I looked at her. You can tell? Yes. How? You stopped drinking your coffee. I looked down. She was right. I had completely forgotten about it. You really notice everything. Hannah shrugged. Not everything. Almost everything. Maybe. I smiled. You know, most people would be nervous about presenting. I am. That surprised me. You are? Yes. Really? Yes. I laughed. That might be the first time I've heard you admit that. Hannah looked at the floor. I'm nervous because I care. That answer stayed with me. Because I always thought confidence meant not being afraid. Hannah was teaching me something different. Maybe confidence was being afraid and still making a choice. The presentation started after lunch. One team after another walked to the front. Some students brought detailed slides. Some had videos. Some had impressive statistics. Our turn came. Whitmore and Carter. The coordinator called our names. A few people looked surprised when I stood. They expected Hannah. Everyone did. I walked to the front. Hannah sat with the other participants. Not behind me. Not beside me. In the audience. For some reason, that made me less nervous. I explained the idea. A student interview program. A way for younger students to learn from older students before making decisions about classes, activities, and future plans. The first question came from a reviewer. Why this project? I thought about giving the impressive answer. The one that sounded professional. Then I decided against it. Because I think schools are full of information, but not everyone knows how to find it. The reviewer nodded. Explain. Someone can have access to opportunities and still miss them because they don't know where to start. I looked around the room. Sometimes people don't need someone to solve their problems. They need someone who has already been there to tell them what questions to ask. The room became quiet. The second question came. Why do you believe students would participate? Before I answered, I looked toward Hannah. Not because I needed help. Because I wanted her to know I remembered. I said, because people usually help when they understand that their experience can matter to someone else. When the presentation ended, there was no dramatic reaction. No instant applause. No perfect movie moment. Just a panel taking notes. And honestly, that felt better. After the presentations, the teams waited for results. I found Hannah outside. You did well, she said. I smiled. That's your review? Yes. Very emotional. I can be more specific. Please don't. She smiled. Then she became serious. I was proud of you. I looked at her. That sentence meant more than I expected. Why? Because you stopped trying to prove you belonged. I almost interrupted. Then I stopped. Because she wasn't saying I had finally earned my place. She was saying I had stopped doubting it. The results were announced an hour later. Our project received funding. Not the largest amount. Not the biggest award. Enough to start. That was exactly what we wanted. After the announcement, the coordinator asked Hannah to say a few words. She walked to the microphone. I expected a speech. She was good at speeches. Instead, she said, I think the most important part of this project is that it started because someone noticed a problem that many people ignored. She looked at me. Evan noticed it. I shook my head slightly. She continued, but the reason it worked is because he was willing to let other people improve his idea. That surprised me. Because Hannah wasn't making me the hero. She was describing a partnership. After the retreat ended, we walked back toward the parking lot. The weekend was over. The project was approved. The emergency contact issue no longer felt like the biggest thing between us. But I still had one question. Hannah. Yes? The form. She smiled. You really don't give up. No. Good. I looked at her. Good? Yes. Why? Because if you stopped asking questions, you wouldn't be you. We reached the school entrance. I stopped. Hannah. She turned. Why did you write boyfriend? This time, she didn't avoid the answer. Because I didn't know another word. I waited. The form asked for someone who would make decisions for me if I couldn't. She looked at me. And I realized the person I trusted most was you. I nodded slowly. That explains the emergency contact. Yes. But not the boyfriend part. A small smile appeared. No. Then? Hannah looked away. I wanted to know what it felt like to choose something before I had every detail figured out. That was probably the most honest thing she had ever said. For someone like Hannah, uncertainty was not comfortable. She liked preparation. She liked answers. She liked knowing what happened next. But she had chosen something without a guarantee. Me. My phone buzzed. A reminder appeared. The community documentary interview was scheduled for Monday. I looked at the message. Hannah noticed. Your project. Yeah. You should go. I looked at her. You're not curious? I am. Then I know you have something important. I smiled. That's very mature. She raised an eyebrow. Were you expecting something else? Maybe. What? I thought you might say you wanted to come. She thought for a moment. I do. I smiled. But I don't want to become the reason your story changes. That answer surprised me. Because a few days ago, I thought Hannah was the person who needed someone. Now I was realizing something else. She wanted to be part of my life. She didn't want to replace it. On Monday morning, the documentary interview went well. I spent the afternoon editing footage. Everything felt normal again. Until I received a message from Hannah. Can we talk after school? I replied. Sure. What happened? Her answer came a minute later. I need to tell you something about the form. I stared at the message. Because I thought we already understood. Apparently, we didn't. I met Hannah after school in the empty music room. It wasn't a place we usually went. That was the first thing I noticed. Hannah always chose places based on purpose. Student council office for meetings. Library for research. Conference rooms for planning. The music room was different. It was quiet. Personal. She was sitting near the window when I arrived. No papers. No laptop. No schedule. That alone told me this conversation mattered. You're early. I smiled. You say that like it surprises you. It doesn't. Then why mention it? Because I wanted to. I sat across from her. You said you needed to tell me something about the form. Hannah nodded. Yes. I waited. For once, I didn't rush her. I didn't tell you the whole reason. That got my attention. The whole reason for what? The emergency contact. I leaned back. I thought we solved that. We solved why I trusted you. She looked at me. We didn't solve why I was afraid to tell you. That was different. Afraid? Hannah looked slightly uncomfortable. Yes. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because Hannah Whitmore admitting fear still felt impossible. Why? She looked toward the window. Because I knew you would ask the exact questions you're asking now. I smiled. That sounds like a compliment. It is. She took a breath. When I filled out the form, I was preparing for the leadership retreat. I know. The school asked us to choose someone who could make important decisions if something happened. Right. She nodded. And I realized something. What? I have spent years making decisions for other people. I listened. Student council decisions. Team decisions. Event decisions. But when someone asked me who I wanted making a decision for me, she stopped. I immediately thought of you. I understood that part. But there was still something missing. The boyfriend label. Hannah looked down. Yes. Why? She was quiet for several seconds. Because I was tired of pretending there was a simple category for what you were to me. That answer surprised me. Not because it was romantic. Because it sounded like Hannah. She wasn't chasing a dramatic confession. She was frustrated that the world didn't have a precise word for something complicated. You could have told me. I said. I know. Then why didn't you? Because I didn't know what you would say. That surprised me. Hannah. Yes? You're the person everyone thinks has no fear. She smiled slightly. That is because everyone only sees the decisions after I make them. That sentence stayed with me. Because it explained a lot. People saw Hannah after the answer existed. They never saw the moment before. The uncertainty. The doubt. The possibility of being wrong. I wasn't afraid you would reject me. She said. I looked at her. You weren't? No. Then what? I was afraid you would say yes because you felt responsible. That caught me. Because it was exactly the kind of thing I might have done. I liked helping people. Sometimes too much. Hannah noticed. Of course she did. You fix things. She said. That is what you do. I smiled. Is that bad? No. She shook her head. But I didn't want to become another thing you fixed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Because that was the first time I understood the other side. I had been worried that Hannah's world would make me disappear. She had been worried that my kindness would make me stay for the wrong reason. So what do you want now? I asked. Hannah looked at me. A real answer. From me? Yes. About what? She thought for a moment. About whether you want to know me. That was not the question I expected. Not. Do you want to date me? Not. Do you like me? Something simpler. But somehow harder. I already know you. I said. No. She smiled. You know the version of me that helps. I understood. The version everyone saw. The leader. The planner. The person who always had a solution. And the other version? I asked. She looked away. The one who doesn't always know what to do. That was the first real invitation Hannah gave me. Not to stand beside the perfect version. To know the person behind it. My phone buzzed. A message from the community media studio. The documentary director wanted me to submit a sample edit earlier than expected. I looked at the message. Hannah noticed. Your project. Yeah. Deadline? Soon. She nodded. Then you should work on it. I looked at her. Right now? Yes. But we're talking. We can continue. You're not upset? Why would I be? Because this conversation is important. Hannah smiled. So is your work. That answer mattered. Because I realized Hannah was not asking me to prove I chose her. She was watching whether I continued choosing myself. Over the next week, our relationship changed quietly. Not because we announced anything. We didn't. Not because the whole school suddenly knew. They already had enough theories. It changed because we started acting differently. I asked about her day. Not her responsibilities. Her day. She asked about my documentary. Not because she wanted to help solve it. Because she wanted to hear about it. She started telling me when she was stressed. I started telling her when I needed advice instead of pretending I already had an answer. It was less dramatic than the first kiss. But it felt more real. Then the leadership retreat project reached its final stage. The school approved funding for the student interview program. Now we had to record the first group of interviews before graduation. It was the last major step. Hannah and I spent Saturdays setting up cameras in the library. You're nervous. I said. She looked at me. About what? Being interviewed. I am not being interviewed. You are helping lead the project. That is different. How? She adjusted the camera. Because talking about the project is easier than talking about myself. I smiled. That is the most honest thing you've ever said. I know. The first interview was with a freshman student. She talked about how difficult it had been choosing clubs. How she felt behind everyone else. How she wished she had known someone older who could answer questions. After the recording ended, Hannah stayed quiet. What? I asked. Nothing. I looked at her. She sighed. I understand why you wanted to make this. That meant more than praise. Because Hannah didn't just like the project. She understood the reason behind it. That evening, after we finished, we walked outside. Evan. Yeah? I need to ask something. Okay. If tomorrow everyone stopped talking about us? She paused. Would you still want this? I knew what she meant. Not the attention. Not the rumors. Not the emergency form. Us. I thought about it, then answered honestly. Yes. Hannah looked relieved. Why? Because I like who I am around you. She was quiet. Then she smiled. That is a good answer. Only good? Very good. The next Monday, the school posted the final leadership retreat report. The student interview program received special recognition. Everyone congratulated Hannah. But something unexpected happened. A teacher asked me to speak at the final student meeting. I almost refused. Not because I didn't want to, because I assumed everyone wanted Hannah. When I told her, she looked at me. What are you going to say? I don't know. Good. I laughed. Why is that good? Because you always say better things when you stop trying to make them perfect. The meeting was 2 days later. And standing in front of everyone, I realized something. The form had started this. But it wasn't the reason we were here anymore. The real question was not why Hannah wrote my name. It was whether two people with completely different ways of handling life could choose each other without losing themselves. And I thought we finally had our answer. Until Hannah walked up to me after the meeting. She looked serious. Evan. What happened? She handed me her phone. A message from the school office. The emergency contact forms were being reviewed because of a new policy update. Students had to confirm their listed relationships. I looked at Hannah. So? She was quiet. Now I have to officially explain why you are listed as my boyfriend. And suddenly, the thing that started everything was asking for an answer we had never actually given. The school office meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. When Hannah told me, my first reaction was confusion. Not fear. Not anger. Just confusion. Because after everything we had talked about, I thought the hardest part was already over. The rumors. The questions. The uncertainty. But apparently, there was still one simple thing we had avoided. The question everyone else had been asking since the beginning. What were we? I found Hannah outside the administration building before the meeting. She was reading the policy update on her phone. Of course she was. She had probably memorized the entire thing already. You're studying. She looked up. I'm preparing. Same thing. No. What's the difference? Studying is collecting information. Preparing is deciding what to do with it. I smiled. Only you would explain the difference. It matters. I sat beside her. Are you nervous? Hannah looked at the building. Yes. The honesty surprised me. About what? She thought for a moment. About saying something important in a way that makes it smaller. I understood. Hannah had always been careful with words. Not because she wanted to sound impressive. Because she believed words created responsibility. So what are you going to say? I asked. The truth. That sounds simple. It isn't. The meeting was short. The school administrator explained that the emergency contact form needed clarification because several students had misunderstood the relationship categories. The form was meant to identify who could make emergency decisions, not to create official relationship announcements. The administrator looked at Hannah. Can you explain your choice? Hannah nodded. Yes. She glanced at me, then back at the administrator. Evan Carter is the person I trust most to make decisions if I cannot. The administrator wrote something down. And your relationship? The room became quiet. This was the moment. A few weeks ago, Hannah had written one word without asking me. Now she had to answer while I was sitting beside her. She took a breath. My original answer was not accurate. I looked at her. The administrator nodded. Meaning? Hannah continued. I used a word because the form did not have a category that matched what I meant. That was the first time I realized something. Hannah wasn't trying to force a label onto us. She was trying to describe something that existed before the label. The administrator looked at me. Do you agree with that? I thought about it. A month ago, I would have been overwhelmed. I would have focused on the strange way everything started. The form. The kiss. The rumors. But that wasn't where we were anymore. Yes. I said. The administrator waited. I corrected myself. I agree that the form didn't explain everything. Hannah looked at me. I continued. But I also know I want to keep finding out what this is. For the first time in the entire conversation, Hannah smiled. The administrator nodded. Then we will update the form. Relationship category? Hannah asked. The administrator looked at the options. We can use personal emergency contact. I almost laughed. That sounds very unromantic. Hannah looked at me. Accurate, though. I smiled. Very you. After the meeting, we walked outside. The whole thing had lasted 15 minutes. But somehow, it felt bigger than the kiss. Because the kiss was Hannah making a choice. This was both of us making one. You're quiet, she said. I'm thinking. About? The fact that you just corrected a school form instead of defending the boyfriend label. Hannah nodded. Yes. Why? Because I don't want a word that sounds right. She looked at me. I want something that is true. That answer stayed with me. Because it explained Hannah better than anything else. She didn't like shortcuts. She didn't like pretending. She didn't like saying something because it sounded good. Even when she was being romantic, she wanted it to be honest. The following week, the student interview project held its first official session. It was a small event. Not the kind that attracted everyone's attention. Not the kind that created headlines. Just younger students sitting in a classroom asking older students questions. And somehow, it became one of the best things we had done all year. I watched Hannah talk with a freshman who was worried about choosing classes. She didn't give a perfect answer. She asked questions first. That was new. After the session ended, I mentioned it. You changed. She looked surprised. Changed how? You used to answer everything immediately. I still do. Less than before. She thought about it. Maybe. Why? She looked at the students leading the room. Because I learned that people don't always need the fastest answer. What do they need? Sometimes they need someone willing to listen long enough to understand the question. That was Hannah. Always learning. Always adjusting. Not becoming a different person. Becoming more comfortable being herself. A few days later, my documentary was finally completed. The community center director watched the final version with me. When it ended, he smiled. You made people pay attention. That meant more to me than any award. I showed Hannah the finished video that evening. She watched the entire thing. No checking her phone. No interruptions. When it ended, she was quiet. What? I asked. She looked at me. I understand now. What? Why this matters to you. I smiled. That took you a while. I know. Why? Because I was trying to understand the project. She paused. Now I understand the person who made it. That was the moment I realized something. At the beginning, Hannah had chosen me because she trusted me. Now she knew me because she cared. Those were different things. The next day was the final student leadership meeting of the year. Hannah and I walked into the room together. Not because people expected it. Not because the school was watching. Because we wanted to. Maya saw us and smiled. So? I looked at her. So what? Did you two finally figure out what you are? Hannah answered before I could. Yes. Maya looked surprised. What? Hannah smiled. We're two people who chose to keep getting to know each other. Maya stared. That is the most Hannah answer possible. I laughed. Yes. But I liked it. Because it was honest. After the meeting, Hannah and I walked through the hallway. The school year was almost over. But unlike before, neither of us was trying to predict everything that came next. Evan. Yeah? Do you regret asking about the form? I thought about it. No. Why? Because if I hadn't asked, I would have only known the surprising part. And now I know the important part. She looked at me. What is it? I smiled. That you didn't choose the word. A pause. You chose me. For once, Hannah had no immediate response. Then she smiled. Yes. And that was enough. After the emergency contact form was corrected, something unexpected happened. Nothing. I thought the whole school would keep talking. I thought people would ask questions. I thought everyone would want to know whether Hannah Whitmore and I were officially together. But they didn't. The rumors disappeared faster than they started. Because people eventually lose interest when there is no dramatic answer to chase. And honestly, I was grateful. For the first time since I saw my name on that form, Hannah and I could just exist. Not as a rumor. Not as a question. Not as a story everyone else was trying to understand. Just as Hannah and Evan. The strangest part was that without all the attention, I noticed more things about her. Like how she always arrived 10 minutes early because she liked having time to think. How she kept a small notebook where she wrote ideas she wasn't ready to share. How she pretended not to care about compliments but remembered every sincere one. And she noticed things about me too. She knew when I was editing too long and forgetting to eat. She knew when I was avoiding asking for help. She knew when I said I'm fine because I didn't want to interrupt someone else's problem. Apparently, being understood worked both ways. One afternoon, we were sitting in the library working on the final version of the student interview program. You changed the opening question. Hannah said. I looked at my laptop. Yes. Why? The original question was too formal. She looked at the screen. What did you replace it with? I showed her. What is something you wish someone had told you earlier? Hannah read it twice. That is better. I smiled. Thank you. She continued reading. It gives people room to answer honestly. I looked at her. You know, that almost sounded like a compliment. It was. I laughed. Hannah had changed. A year ago, she would have simply said, the question is effective. Now she said, it gives people room to answer honestly. Small changes, but real ones. A few days later, the final student leadership presentation arrived. It wasn't a competition. There were no rankings, no awards, just students sharing projects they created during the year. Hannah was supposed to introduce the student interview program. I was supposed to explain the documentary side and how we collected stories. Before we went on stage, she looked nervous. I noticed immediately. You're nervous. She looked at me. No. I raised an eyebrow. She sighed. Fine. Yes. I smiled. Why? Because this is different. Different how? She looked toward the stage. Usually, I talk about things I accomplished. And now I'm talking about something I cared about. That answer surprised me. Because Hannah was someone who could speak in front of hundreds of people without hesitation. But sharing something personal was harder. You'll be good, I said. She looked at me. You sound very certain. I am. Why? Because I've seen you do difficult things. She smiled. That is a very careful answer. What does that mean? It means you avoided saying something overly emotional. Was I supposed to? No. Good. The presentation went better than expected. Students asked questions. Teachers offered suggestions. The younger students who participated in the interviews shared how helpful the program had been. At the end, the advisor thanked everyone. Then she looked at Hannah. You started this year believing leadership meant having every answer. The room became quiet. Hannah smiled slightly. I did. The advisor continued. And what did you learn? Hannah looked around. At the students. The teachers. Then at me. That the best leaders are not the people who never need help. A pause. They are the people who know when to trust others. The applause was warm. Not huge. Not dramatic. But it felt right. After the presentation, Hannah and I walked outside. The school was almost empty. You were good, I said. So were you. I wasn't nervous. I know. How? You stopped touching your watch. I laughed. You really notice everything. Not everything. Almost everything. She smiled. We reached the front steps. Evan. Yeah? I have a question. I looked at her. That sounds dangerous. It isn't. What is it? She thought for a moment. When I first wrote your name on that form, I waited. I thought the hardest part would be telling you. And? It wasn't. I looked at her. What was? Waiting to see if you would choose me for the right reason. That answer was important. Because I finally understood something. Hannah had never needed proof that I liked her. She needed to know that I could stand beside her without disappearing. So, I said. She looked at me. What? Are you still keeping my name as your emergency contact? A small smile appeared. Yes. Even after everything? Yes. Why? She thought for a moment. Because now I know something. What? The person who can help you in an emergency is not always the person who has all the answers. She looked at me. Sometimes it is the person who reminds you that you don't have to handle everything alone. I smiled. That's actually a good explanation. Thank you. I expected something more dramatic. I know. That's why you said something normal. Yes. The next week was our last week of school. Everyone was preparing for graduation. But unlike many people, Hannah wasn't trying to make the final days perfect. She was enjoying them. And that was probably the biggest change of all. The girl who once planned every possible outcome had learned that some moments were better when they simply happened. On Friday afternoon, we returned to the nurse's office. The same place where everything started. The desk was empty. The room was quiet. Hannah opened the drawer and took out a copy of the updated emergency contact form. I looked at it. The relationship section had been changed. Not boyfriend. Not anything complicated. Just trusted contact. I smiled. You kept a copy? Yes. Why? She looked at the paper. Because this was where I made the first decision. I looked at her. And now? She folded the paper carefully. Now I know what that decision means. My phone buzzed. A reminder for my documentary screening. The community center was hosting a small event to show the finished film. Hannah noticed. You're screening. Yeah, I'll be there. I smiled. You don't have to. I know. That was the difference. She wasn't going because she was responsible. She wasn't going because I needed her. She was going because she wanted to. And that was when I realized the biggest thing Hannah Whitmore had taught me. Sometimes the most important person in your life is not the person who completes your story. It is the person who chooses to keep reading it with you. The community center screening was held on a Saturday afternoon. It wasn't a school event. There were no teachers giving speeches, no student council banners, no audience waiting because someone important was speaking. Just people from the neighborhood sitting in a small room, watching stories about their own community. That was exactly why I liked it. When I first started the documentary, I thought the hardest part would be filming. It wasn't. The hardest part was convincing people that their ordinary experiences mattered. Hannah arrived 10 minutes early. Of course she did. You're early. She looked at me. You say that every time. Because you are always early. That is because arriving late creates unnecessary problems. I smiled. Very Hannah. She looked around the room. Not at the decorations. Not at the projector. At the people. You're nervous. I looked at her. How do you know? You checked the camera 3 times. I laughed. You really do notice everything. She smiled. Not everything. I shook my head. Almost everything. The screening started. For the next 30 minutes, I watched strangers see pieces of their own lives on a screen. A retired mechanic talking about repairing bicycles for neighborhood kids. A volunteer explaining why the community garden mattered. A student describing how the center helped them find confidence. When the film ended, nobody immediately stood up. They just sat there, thinking. Then someone started clapping. Slowly. Others joined. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. Afterward, the director of the community center shook my hand. You told their stories without making yourself the center. That sentence meant a lot. Because that was what I wanted. I didn't want people to remember me. I wanted them to remember the people in the film. When everyone left, Hannah and I stayed behind to pack equipment. You were happy, she said. I looked at her. Yeah. Why? I thought about it. Because it worked. She smiled. That sounds like you. What does that mean? You care about results. That sounds like you too. She shook her head. No. I looked at her. What's different? Hannah carefully placed the camera into its case. You care about whether something helps people. A pause. I used to care more about whether something succeeded. That was probably the biggest difference between us. I looked for meaning. She looked for solutions. Somehow, we had learned from each other. On the way home, we stopped at a small cafe near the community center. It was quiet, almost empty. Hannah sat across from me with a cup of tea. You know what's funny? She asked. What? When I filled out that form, I thought I was making the safest choice. I smiled. Writing someone's name as your boyfriend without telling them was your safe choice? She looked slightly embarrassed. When you say it like that, no. I laughed. But yes. Why? She looked out the window. Because I knew you would be honest. I waited. Most people would have reacted to the word. Boyfriend? Yes. They would have focused on whether it sounded good. She looked back at me. You focused on whether it was true. That was something I had never considered. The reason Hannah trusted me wasn't because I always supported her. It was because I challenged her when something didn't make sense. Even when the answer was uncomfortable. Hannah. Yes? Do you regret kissing me before explaining? She thought about it. No. I raised an eyebrow. No. No. Why? A small smile appeared. Because if I had explained first, you would have analyzed every sentence. I laughed. That is accurate. And you might have talked yourself out of listening to what you actually felt. I became quiet. Because she was right. I spent a lot of time trying to understand things before allowing myself to experience them. Maybe that was why we worked. She taught me that not everything needed a perfect explanation before it mattered. I taught her that not everything needed a perfect plan before it could begin. A week later, graduation arrived. But this time, it wasn't another event we had to solve. It was simply a day. Friends took pictures. Families celebrated. Students said goodbye. Hannah and I didn't make any announcement. We didn't need one. Everyone who mattered already knew. After the ceremony, I found her near the school garden. The same place where the student interview project had recorded its first conversation. You're avoiding the crowd. I said. She smiled. I am choosing a quieter place. Same thing. Not exactly. I laughed. She handed me something. A small card. I looked down. It was not a Wi-Fi password. Not a form. Not a schedule. Just a handwritten note. I read it. Emergency contact, Evan Carter. Reason, the person I trust to tell me the truth. I looked at her. You changed it again? Yes. Why? She thought for a moment. Because the first one described what I needed. And this one? It describes what I chose. For once, I had no clever response. Because that was the answer. The form was never really about a label. The kiss was never really about surprising me. The rumors were never really about everyone else. It was about two people learning how to choose each other without losing themselves. So, I said. Hannah looked at me. Yeah? Do I still get to ask why you put my name there? She smiled. You already know. Tell me anyway. She looked at the school behind us. Because when I imagined the person I wanted beside me during the moments that mattered. She looked back at me. It was you. Simple. Honest. Completely Hannah. I smiled. And the boyfriend part? She laughed softly. I think I was hoping you would eventually become the person I was already choosing. That answer was different from the first one. The first one was about trust. This one was about hope. And maybe that was what made it real. Because love was not deciding someone belonged to you. It was giving them the freedom to choose you back. Hannah Whitmore once filled out a form because she needed someone she trusted. Somehow, along the way, she found someone she loved. And somehow, I found the person who made me want to keep becoming better too. The next time someone asked me how I became the emergency contact for the girl everyone thought had everything figured out, I knew exactly what I would say. I wasn't chosen because I had all the answers. I was chosen because I was willing to ask the right questions. And she wasn't the girl who needed someone to save her. She was the girl who finally found someone she could stand beside. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.